All right, welcome back. Yeah, so that is what we're focusing on this morning on Sunrise Daily, just trying to what can be done, how do we address some of these issues. All hands really have got to be on deck from whichever quarters. We've got two gentlemen joining us this morning. Commodore Kenneth Yamu is a member, Global Air Force Climate Change Collaboration Group. He's also a climate change researcher. We'll also have Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Kambali. Good morning.
Well, let me start with you, General. I mean, looking at all of this is a huge challenge that we've got on our hands. And there are several scenarios for different states in terms of how they're approaching it. So if you could give us, perhaps you start from giving us your understanding of what we're dealing with here.
Yes, thank you very much. We are dealing with a global disaster. Global disaster. It's global enough and disaster enough for the IMF to downgrade the growth for this year. From 6.1 last year to 4.2 initially, now to 3.6. That's significant. And they're also projecting inflation now to be, for the developed world, 5.7%. Then for us in the emerging economy, 8.7%. That's threatening us with the recession. And some of the interactive things are COVID-19, climate emergency, and the Ukraine war. See, coming to us here, we've seen the whole disaster coming since 2017. The World Economic Forum warned you that, look, the ice, the size, 8 times the size of New York, was going to melt in 4 years. It was projected to melt in 10 years. In 10 years. Then what does that mean? That is going to elevate the water level. That is going to elevate the water level and add additional 1.5 billion tons of water to the ocean. To the ocean. What is that? That is 150 times the amount of water needed by UK to use. Why am I saying this? You are in the southern hemisphere. Well, in the southern hemisphere, your land mass is 30%, and you have water. You have 4 oceans. So when you are talking of what is happening, you are basically talking of temperature and water. Their interaction. The interaction. And again, to you also know that since 1990, the water in the atmosphere, the water vapor in the atmosphere, have increased from 5% to 20%. That's also with the possibility of pouring additional 30% water down. The conundrum of all this is that, look, the water that is supposed to fall for a year, you are not having it in 48 hours. 48 hours. Ours is being aggravated by Lago Dam. Lago Dam, you know Lago Dam now? It's 308 meters long, 40 meters high, then 9 meters thick. The surface area is 586 square meters. And it's supposed to irrigate 15,000 hectares of crops. That's it. So if you have water coming down from 40 meters, you know what 40 meters is? Where water is resting, it has potential energy. By the time it is coming, it has kinetic energy. And that's very, it's just like you pouring water from a bottle mouth to anything. You cannot collect that same water with a bottle mouth. Yes, the Dancing Dam that was created to collect the water was probably in 1982. Then climate change have not become very devastating. It was 2.5 the size of Lago Dam. Now we have a problem. What are you going to do? Lago Dam is basically entering into the River Benue. So you have to, it is not that this flooding is not, you can't solve it, but it's going to come at a very huge cost in infrastructure.
So whilst it is true that, that is going to, we're going to see, we're going to have to spend quite a huge amount of resources to be able to solve the flooding. Have you seen any, I mean, given all of the warnings that we have had and given the adverse impact that it is going to have on our economy and livelihoods, I mean, maybe I should put it the other way, lives, because right now we understand about 600 people have lost their lives as a result of the floods. It's going to have a resultant effect on livelihoods. It's going to have impact on how, you know, people are currently living. People who are internally displaced are not finding it funny as we speak. And then generally, I mean, the aftershocks felt in other neighboring states which might not even be affected by the flood. For instance, here in Abuja, where we're seeing a scarcity of petroleum products as a result of a breakage in supply chains. I'm wondering whether you've seen a sense of emergency, a sense of urgency on our part, knowing that this is what has been projected, this is what we are expecting. We should be seeing a Marshall Plan of some sort, you know, by those who are concerned to see how we can mitigate this. We're not seeing any of that. Do we have an explanation for that?
Yes, well, you see, whatever you are doing now is not going to be a measure to the catastrophe. It's no more a disaster, it's a catastrophe now. We are worried about the flood. No, we should be worried about the flood stage now. What is the flood stage? That is the number of time, the number of days that the flood is going to stay after the flooding. Now, the highest had been 156 days. That was in Mississippi. To solve a problem, you must go back to history. When you're going back to history, you go back to Mississippi. When it was flooded in 1927, what did they do? They went back to the drawing board. They went back to the drawing board, massive investment, elevated structures. What are you talking? Your bridge should be elevated now in those areas that are very, very concerned. Do you understand? But with the establishment of the Climate Commission, that's a positive step in the right direction. This one has overwhelmed the subnational and national level. So it's a very huge problem.
So where do we turn to if the national level is overwhelmed?
No, well, the national level is coming in now, providing a whole lot of, but subnational level cannot do anything. They need the national level now to come in, which they already do. You can see material being distributed and everything and all. That is it. But the national level now is taking charge of the flood stage.
Okay.
Yes, that's
but Dr. K, do you think we have a sense? All this data, yes, they're all there. But do you think we actually understand the gravity of what we're dealing with here?
I think we do, even if not anything, the casualty figures will tell us that that's a serious matter. I want to contextualize it, taking off from where Commodore began, the matter of water level.
Yeah.
The projected amount, the biggest ice sheet, I think, in the North Pole, in the Arctic region, Lassen B, was projected to melt in 20 years. It melted in 3 years, the bulk of it, between 1990 and 1993. Now, the overall global environment, global warming is increasing water volume, that is one. Here, what is the root of our own crisis? When you create a dam, you reduce the amount of water going downstream. And we've been creating dams. That means that what used to be part of the riverbed and floodplains, over the years were mistaken for dry land. And so people began to build more and more into the riverbed. Where you have towns, if I use the expression as in the Delta and Onitsha, you know, between the River Niger, those were where the River Niger used to be. But you now have sand in the middle of the River Niger. If you're traveling south, most of the rivers have water in the middle. These are rivers that used to fill up. If you look at the condition of Lokoja in this last flood, the last one was 2012.
Yeah.
Now, all those buildings, their roofs were underwater. That would tell you that had there been the normal volume of water on that channel was coming, there will be no houses there. And the bulk of Lokoja is not soil in that axis area. It's silt and alluvial deposit. No, not alluvial deposit, silt and pith. What more than all of that accumulates over time. So what am I talking about? We have many cities that are living below the supposed water level because for a long time they mistook for dry land what is not dry land. And consistently, each time there's the expectation of a flood, NIMET warns. The question now is, did NIMET warn Nigerians? Yes. Did NIMET warn state governments? Yes. Repeatedly? Yes. Did many of the governments talk to the people to move? Yes. If you recall, when Babangida Ali was governor of Niger State, he even built an alternative, let me use the word town or village. The people refused to relocate. At a point, the emir moved, and then some of them began to move. So let's disaggregate the issues. There's a matter of an environment that, has challenges of governance intelligence over several decades. We like farming, isn't it? We should have more food. So when you create dams, what do? You reduce the water, you destroy local economies downstream. Now, what's the effect of destroying local economies? People who fish, who do crab farming, will have no means of livelihood. Crime goes up. Then you've reduced the amount of water. Water transportation disappears. With that, siltation increases. Now, this goes on, and people there begin to think that this is a normal environment. Lo and behold, a percentage of the actual amount of water returns, and they discover they've been living in the riverbed. Why would water cover somebody's roof? If you have, or intelligent urban planning that works with the gradient of the environment, and then looks at this whole floodplain thing. There's a channel that comes all the way from Tanzania that passes through part of West Africa. So the absence of a global view of the environment in terms of the geology of it, the geography of it, the physical and human geography, which are two different things, that's what we are suffering now. If you're going to Lokoja, just 30 more seconds, before you get to, after the 2012 flooding, some parts were elevated. Just before you enter, anybody looking will know that that thing ought to have been elevated for about 11 meters. They did about 2 or 3 meters. Everybody was happy. How could you do that? So, and before you get to that point where you enter Lokoja, that long road that's full of trees, that road was constructed, material was brought to make it, because whenever there's flooding, you have practically rivers on which you can fish on both sides. A return to the appropriate measures that we will raise, which will be monumental, like he said. How are you going to raise that part of Lokoja higher? You know why it's critical? There's going to be more of this, more frequently going forward.
Wow. Yeah.
It is very disturbing to think about. I mean, because we're still trying to wrap our heads around this, and for a number of people, they think that, I mean, I'm sure that you have been saying what's been happening. The explanation has been going on social media. Air Commodore spoke about a dam which was conceived. That dam, we never built it, did we?
No,
there's extensive work going on there. You see, we say here, the national government is doing a lot. All over the world, you've seen that when the climate change has challenged the reserve, the pulse of so many nations, so many sovereignties. Go to Pakistan. The other day, I listened to the Secretary General of the UN appealing to the international community, including private sector, to come to the aid of Pakistan. The same thing with South Africa.
We saw what happened in Pakistan. It was a terrible disaster. I mean, the monsoon rains there, really outdid themselves this year. It was really heart-wrenching to watch. But, right here in Nigeria, I'm talking about the dam. You two also spoke about, did we build the dam? Or we just started work and never finished it?
No, the dam is there. Well, maybe they will try and complete it now.
Okay, so it's not completed. Because for a number of people, they say that was part of the agreement with Cameroon when Cameroon was building the Lagdo Dam, that we also were supposed to be doing a part of doing something on our own side to stop, to try and mitigate whatever was going to be coming from Cameroon, because it was already thought at that time that Cameroon from time to time will have to release water from the dam if, whenever the situation arises. There are also questions as to, these are things that we knew. I mean, we usually know that, on both sides of a river, around the riverbed, we should give, certain number of meters from building. Have state governments been able to enforce this effectively? And then dredging of our rivers. These are big questions that have been asked. I mean, we need constantly sand for development. And some people say, oh, they constantly give out these contracts. But, we don't know if it is implemented.
No, in respect of the state governments. You see, when you have the riverbed dry, for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, the concept of floodplain disappears. Because what you call a floodplain is where when the river fills out too much, the excess water goes, eventually it returns. Now, progressively, we've been mistaken floodplains for dry land. From that, we've been mistaken part of the river for dry land. And so you find that urban planning has not been sensitive with the aquageology of the places where work is going on. And so when you state governments, they're developing new areas, without even sometimes understanding, doing enough soil tests to know the kind of buildings that should be there. So that's part of the problem. In fact, just to extend this and return to this, Lagos there are 11 recorded officially designated sinking cities in the world that no matter what happens, they will go under. Lagos is on the list.
Oh dear.
No, it's on the list. It's been
true.
there. Victoria Island is not supposed to have high-rise buildings. We are celebrating Eco Atlantic City. For how long will it be there? Yes, they went all the way to bedrock. Then the new flyover between that goes on to Iko, coming from out of here, in all of that, you're also reducing the water space, isn't it? Now, coming around to the critical question of state governments, what are they doing? You must ask yourself the repertoire of knowledge available to state governments and town planners with which they plan the states. They think of estates and of revenues and of new areas and of GRAs and waterfront settlements. Do they know enough about the geology of the environment? The physical geography that should tell them that this should be done or not be done. So whereas one must acknowledge that, and it's not this, anybody who tries to blame the current government for this has no sense of history. Is a violation and disregard that has gone on for a long time. This dam in Zamfara, for instance, it was planned, constructed how many decades ago? But the envisaged impact was underestimated. So it cleaned out more villages than was projected. Were those people compensated?
So does that then mean that we have to have a national approach to this? Perhaps, probably, because I think yesterday the governor of Anambra was saying, well, they have to have a conversation with the federal government to see how they can approach this. Because if different states don't pull together concerning that town planning strategy you speak about, we will face the same thing, because you've said this will happen again.
No, it will. But you see, when they will call the federal government and hold a meeting on emergency. You know, you have cancer and there's pain also. So you hold an emergency meeting to provide Panadol. The pain, you will feel it less. What they're dealing with now is the crisis arising from an incident of flooding. That is different from a comprehensive approach to, look at River Niger. We still have Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA. Are there waterways? Before, people traveled on the Benue by boat.
Yeah.
Now, so all of that out of the way.
But we know that there's also been controversy. I mean, in terms of water, also calling to mind right now the controversial water bill in the National Assembly, and then also the, will I say, the row we see between states who have water bodies, significant, water bodies in them, and with the federal government. Which you talk about over who has right of the waterways. There is an ongoing battle. It's not been highlighted, but I wonder if this has any effect whatsoever on how we've also been able to manage situations like this.
To some extent, but going on the, you mentioned dredging. I think Oko also mentioned that is in the papers today. You see, when you dredge, you get a bigger hole, not more water. This is a tangential matter. That's why I'm waiting to see how there will be a port in Onitsha. The inland port and all of that. But on the substantive matter you've raised...
You get a bigger hole that can hold more water.
Where will you get it? You buy pure water? Do you get it? Less water is coming. 68% of the water coming down isn't coming down anymore.
But look at all the water that has come down now.
Precisely. During a season.
Yeah.
If you dredge, that water will just run to the ocean in a week or two. You can't have a port. So going back, if you want to take contract for supply of pure water, I will tell them to go.
But Commodore,
so you don't think that dredging would have solved this?
No. Dredging, if the rivers were dredged, the waters would have moved more freely. That's correct. But you see, dredging does not constitute a permanent solution. In that the ecology of the place and the ecosystem must also be considered. The more you remember, in a normal aquatic environment like where you have a river, the floodplains, that's where crabs live. If you know, that's where you have crab. Fishing takes place. As you dig more and more, that part of the ecology disappears. Fishermen lose their jobs. What do you call it? Local urban migration begins. So you see that the whole thing is tied together. Now, where governments are able to maintain that comprehensive perspective when dealing with problems, when building a dam, when constructing a road, there are many things that could be avoided. But most fundamentally, in all the, what do you call it, flooded areas now, what you find is that there has been, over time, the mistaken impression that what is land is actually land.
Well, Commodore, what should we be doing now? I mean, I know there's still different people who have different perspectives about climate change. So what should our approach be, given what we're facing now?
Yes, well, our approach, what we should be engaged in now, you're going to have immediate, you're going to have medium, you're going to have long term. The immediate now is the flood stage. We need to deal with that, because when you have a flood stage that lasts for a very long time, what are you doing? You're indexing diseases, cholera, dysentery, and all. That is we're going to manage that one after. Thank God the federal government is responding to that significantly, waiting for that to happen. Then, again, you are going to have hunger. Now, it is strong enough, the hunger is strong enough for the African Development Bank to earmark $1.5 billion. It is also strong enough for IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development, to be advising Nigeria to start dry season agriculture early enough. Those are interventions by the national government. It is also strong enough for the Islamic Bank, IFAD, and African Development Bank to put in $4.5 billion to shore up agriculture, because what we're going to do now, that is the immediate food security. Don't forget, when you have flooding, you are going to have economic security, you're going to have water security, you're going to have health security. At the end of the day, national security, which will be imparted on migration, displacement. So then in the medium term, we're going to have nature-based solution, adaptation, mitigation, and all. Don't forget that the whole of all these things is subsumed into climate change, which the federal government has set up the Climate Change Commission to take effect. But the sad thing is that we only contribute less than 1% of carbon emission, which is not equal to the devastation that we are having. But compounding all these things, that we have 325 dams in Nigeria. Dams are like vehicles. When you buy them, you have to service them. You have to deseed them. You have to make sure that they are in the state to do what you have established it to do. It's very, very important. That's the medium term. The long term is infrastructure. Like the Mississippi did. See, every solution you are taking now must have the framework in its front: climate change. Climate change. Now, like the national government have done a lot. They've increased the national determined contribution for carbon from 45% to 47%. That is why going to this year's COP, what is the message that everybody is going to take? It's a global message. Starting from 1972, 1979, the Kyoto Protocol, including the Paris Agreement, they all tend to say, look, the international community, you are doing a lot of the pollution. So you also come clean in assisting the emerging economy. So the whole world is going to be going there now with the same cry that has forced IMF to downgrade the growth for the year. So it's a national thing. The long term is that we have to invest in infrastructure. Elevation of bridges, elevation of outright relocation. You know, after the Mississippi, that substantially gave rise to Texas. And again, to technology, data. After Mississippi flooded, they went back. You know, in Texas now, there are technologies to examine the laying of the sand at the river bed. What does that tell you? It tells you the speed. So by the time you relate with that, you are able to know, okay, this flood that is coming now, this was how it came 2 years ago. What was the preparation? You prepared it. In 2017, you remember, Nigeria was classified at the countries among the 10 most vulnerable to climate change in the world. In 2021, that was we went to 56 through the action of the national government. But it still remains that we still remain the sixth country with a gap in preparation to prepare for. So we have to put all these things together in the long term. In the long term, because one, you have the third largest mangrove in the world. Of the you have about 3 trillion trees in the world, and most of all this is tree planting. We have to engage in massive tree planting. So those are the three stages that we have to go.
Quite a number of issues, but given, I know you mentioned outright relocation, given how people are attached to land, I wonder how they should deal with that. But we'll talk about some of those issues and more when we return in just a moment. Stay with us. Commodore, let me ask you, given how we are attached to land here, one wonders, how are people supposed to deal with this? Because yes, you've reeled out a lot of information that ordinarily we should have at the back of our minds and deciding everything we do when it's got to do with building or your habitat, wherever. But that's going to be a challenge if you tell people, move away from here because this area may not be in existence in 5, 10, 15 years. How should we be approaching this?
Yes. It is only, there's an Igbo adage that says that it is only a tree that you will tell that I'm going to cut you, and will still remain there. You go and cut it. So we're dealing with an existential threat now. The national government have gone through NIMET. The moment we see those NIMET interactions, it's supposed to be a trigger that, look, something ominous is coming, is going to happen. You understand? But then, river life, plain and all, should start evacuating them.
Yeah. You know, I was listening to the governor of Anambra yesterday when we had on Sunrise Daily, and he used the exact same word, which he just used, existential. He says that Anambra as a state is facing an existential threat. 1/3 of the state, as we speak, is currently submerged in water. Before now, Anambra was also known as the capital of the ocean, you know, in Nigeria. And these are serious environmental, this is not to even add all the other issues that, you know, any state government has had to contend with or will have to contend with. I'm looking at how it is, I mean, that you begin to tell residents based on 1/3 of a state to relocate. To relocate where?
It's graduated now. It does not affect every part the same way. You understand? You see, vulnerable, less vulnerable, more vulnerable. You cannot relocate 1/3 of the country. That's why you need a subsisting solution. This subsisting solution, you see, you have dam, you have levees, you have dikes. They don't perform the same function. When you, like he said, when you get a dam, you put it at the upstream. It takes the water. Now, from Lago Dam, with the amount, 586 square meters area. So what the dam you are going to have is going to be 3 times that size. Precisely. Because the way the water is coming, you have to take it like that. Because their own is 9 meters thick, 40 meters high. Imagine water coming from there.
The kinetic energy and impact.
The kinetic energy and the impact is huge.
Okay.
So you have to graduate it from dam. You move to levees. What does levees do? Whatever escape from the dam is an embankment. It's cut off. And above, you also have to create spillover point into an unvirgin land. You understand? But with an eye on next year's own, it's already coming now. The cold have started in the northern hemisphere. What is that going to give you? Snow.
All right. Go ahead, guys.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Gentlemen, you both seem to be speaking about something that we have not done, things that we have not done over the years that we should have done. The first National Development Plan, for instance, was in 1962. The second one was in 1970. And I'm wondering how this could have affected anything. Dr. Okechukwu, this one is for you. We have had plans over the years that we have not sustained, you know, the development plans that we seem not to have sustained. Do you think there is anything we could have done to forestall this from happening as, you know, as it currently exists? Partnership with the states, between states and federal government, has been not too strong over the years. Is there any way this kind of catastrophe we have on our hands could have been avoided?
To a large extent, yes. You spoke of national development plans. Now, national development plans are usually holistic. In other words, you're planning to, whether it's road construction, you must link it with economic roads and other aspects of the life of the people, and you graduate it over time. Say, 5-year national development plan, and the next 5 years we will have done this and that, then 5 years after we'll do another one. Now, what has happened over the decades is that progressively, especially as we began to have sustained military leadership, national development plans began to drop or be replaced by regime plans. Look at our 20 years of democracy. You had this needs document, fantastic developmental document under Obasanjo. We didn't need, all it needed was continuous implementation by the same party. Yar'Adua came with 7-point agenda. I don't know if you remember any one of the 7. Jonathan, still the same government, came with transformation agenda. Now, you must have national development plans, not regime, what you like, lingos. Now, going back to the substantive question you raised, imagine that, just taking the area of transportation, you're talking about comprehensive national transportation master plan. Rails are working, the waterways are working, the roads are good, all of them integrated. So, and you cannot do all of that without at the same time doing progressive evaluation of the physical geography of the country, the right kind of infrastructure, etc. Take an example, you want to go and give them maybe light in Bayelsa State, and all your life you've never known anything about underground cables. You'll be thinking of electric poles, and you will give them electricity with vulnerable infrastructure, because if any of those poles is brought down, there will be substantial cases of electrocution. Now, what am I saying? A national development plan rests on 3 major pillars, among others. Comprehensive understanding of the physical and human geography of the place, and then policies that address them holistically without one damaging the other when implemented. My take, I may be mistaken, is that had it been we had consistently followed national development plans, we are not likely to be where we are today. If you recall, under Babangida, in fact, he changed it to rolling plans, which means that if you have a national development plan and it's working, it's going on, and there are other things coming up, whether force majeure or issues in technology and development, you integrate and it becomes a rolling plan, still going forward with the same objective of integrating new policies and new processes. Yes, I believe that we wouldn't be where we are today if a culture of organized leadership, rather than episodic encounters, rather than digging boreholes to get an applause, would have made a difference if we've kept to that original kind of approach to comprehensive societal development.
Okay. Well, Commodore, this one is for you. You spoke earlier about, you know, food insecurity and health, you know, insecurity if we do not do the needful. As you have mentioned about Mississippi, these floods will abate. What then would happen to that environment, those communities all over the country that are currently flooded? What would you propose that we begin to do now, especially where you also mentioned that there's another flood coming, whether we like it or not? So when the floods eventually recede, what happens to those communities? What needs to be done if they are going to be habitable again?
Yes, the flooding is not bad in its entirety. It brings alluvial soil. You know, the Almighty God has a way of compensating for disaster. You're going to have a buster agriculture, but before then, you have had rice farms being washed away, You have had yam, particularly, yam does not like water. It's being washed away. Now, before, you see the UNFCCC is promoting, what do you call it? Smart agriculture. Smart agriculture now enables you to do a whole lot of things. It has been welcomed here, it has been received here and all. So we really need to go into it, get the people. As the flood stage, we don't even know how long it's going to last here now. But what do? We have to get this smart agriculture developed substantially. That is, this one has given us a lesson. When you have a problem, what is very important is the lesson that you are taking out from it. That is why you were talking about plan. Plan is what it is, plan. It's an vision, projection, and progression. What it is, but you are not fixing it. You are not going to know the vagaries and everything that is going to happen along the way. So for the agriculture now, we have to embrace smart agriculture now. Going forward, that is what we have to. Now we have to also take advantage of the alluvial soil that is going to be brought to our own environment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but listening to you, it would seem as if there is no consensus on structural solutions to this disaster of monumental proportion. For instance, Dr. Okechukwu asked a very critical question: how do we raise, the areas affected in Kogi State? How do we raise that level? For you, Mr. Air Commodore, rather, you talked about building bridges. But are we going to move 1/3 of, a population in a state to live on bridges? So what is the structural solution, if there is, or perhaps if I missed it, to this type of disaster, particularly because you have said something instructive, that there's going to be another flooding?
Yes, yes, like where we're talking of elevated infrastructure, you see the case of Lokoja, there was an economic constraint. There was no movement of anything, and that impacts the economy significantly. So like you said, like I told you, if you want to solve a problem, you have to go back to history. Like I said, in Mississippi, what did they do? Like that bridge, we know that every year, the water is going to cover it. We should be thinking of an infrastructure now that will make movement. Economy is movement. Money is movement. And everything about it is movement. Then what Dr. Okechukwu said is that the area that can be elevated has to be elevated. It is not a problem that is bedeviling Nigeria alone. No. Essentially, we have to have a policy that confesses most of all this our experience. It's not more a silos policy. It's a policy that interacts with Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, all World Meteorological Agency and all. To put everything, it's going to be about projection so that we know what to do. Like I said, investing in infrastructure is still the way to go. Solving this problem is not impossible, but it's going to come at a very huge cost. We already have, we're not starting from ground zero, like I told you. We already have 325 dams in Nigeria, in the pseudo-Sahel. We can go to that for now, while we think of the Dasin Dam and everything. We can go to that, deseat it, service it and everything, and makes it a work on the Benue axis. Yes.
For instance, if the dam Malkwe talked about earlier that was supposed to be built to check the flooding, the release of water from the Cameroonian dam, if it had been built, would it mitigate, this disaster to a reasonable level? That's on the one hand. On the second hand, the release of the dam, according to reports, usually affects states like Kogi and a number of others that I can't immediately recall. But we find that the release of water from that dam has affected as much as 10 states in Nigeria. Is there any, engineering answer, to this question? Why has it affected more states than expected?
the release of water from the dam only aggravated the issue. There was already a rain that was supposed to fall in 2 years, falling in 48 hours before the dam came. The states you are talking about, they are all on the River Benue axis. So most of them, see, the dam is not a magic. It also has its working principle. When it's getting full, you have to release it. All I want, you are going to have dam breach. And when you have that you cannot even manage that. What you are seeing now will be a child's play when you have a dam breach. So like you earlier said, if we have constructed that, would they have something? No, there was no climate change of this significant interest. Well, maybe will it have been a meager value? That is debatable. But now we need to invest in dams. We need to clean up the 325 dams in the Pseudo-Sahel, and we need to add more, because if you are releasing the water, the Lago Dam is up 40 meters, and we are down. And everything at the end of the day is going to congregate in Lokoja. Lokoja is the bed that is there. What are you going to do there? That is the biggest problem. Lokoja and Anambra.
Wow.
It's very critical.
Suddenly, yes. Yeah, you're going to say something.
Yeah. Lokoja is a confluence town. Several rivers coming together. Then the matter of settlement, the topography indicates that even for the critical economic value of Lokoja between the north and south, nobody needs to tell us now that we need a major bridge, because to relocate the town is not possible. That's the truth. We need a major bridge, at the very least, 25 meters above the existing level, that can carry traffic coming from that main channel from Abuja, possibly over Lokoja if that must happen.
All right, because at the moment, cotton coffee is a challenge. It's affecting fuel supply in different parts of the country, and that's why it won't be out of place for the NNPC, for instance, to speak up on that particular matter. And then, gentlemen have also read out some action points. So the Ministries of Environment, Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, NEMA, they all need to give hope to those who are affected right now, because they need urgent action. And pending, probably, the states have said that they will have that conversation with the federal government. We're hoping, we expect, not just hope, we expect that some of these action points will be executed, because it's not just today. As you've heard, there will be another tomorrow. We need to prepare for that. Well, gentlemen, we have to immensely thank both of you for coming on. Commodore Kenneth Iyamu is a climate change researcher. He's a member of Global Air Force Climate Change Collaboration Group. I wonder how the Air Force and the security agencies are also approaching this matter. Well, then Dr.
We're doing a lot.
Doing a lot?
Yeah.
Okay. Please keep it up. Dr. Okechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you both for coming on.